נלמד עכשיו מתוך שיעור תעש עם הרבש, אנחנו נקרא מספר תלמוד 10
We will now learn a test lesson with Rabash. We will read from the study of the 10 Sefirot, Volume 2, Part 5. We are in item 41.
What does the distance from Binah add for us? So, 41. Afterwards, now we're at the stage of expanding in Chesed and expanding in Keter. So there's no expansion in Chokhmah and not in Binah. Sometimes he mentions Binah. Sometimes he doesn't mention Binah. It doesn't expand in Chesed and expands in Gvurah. Afterwards, it returned to being not expanding in Keter. And it refines again, and then it expands in Chokhmah. At that time, Bina was supposed to remain there in Chokhmah as in the beginning. But because of the light of Chesed in her place, so Bina, it's written here, she remains in her place. She descends to be there with him. It is so because he desires mercy. He wants mercy. What does it mean? Wants to be together with Chesed. And you already know that Bina is called he. When Bina descends to her place, Chesed does not need her. And he descends to his place. That contradicts what we learned above. Above, we learned that she ascends to Chokhmah. Why? Because of the son of the Chesed. And here he says the opposite. Descends down because of Chesed. Chesed does not need her. Why? Now he has the screen that expands in Chokhmah. So Zoranpin is already big. And he descends to his place. This is called expanding in Chesed. Then, the light of Gvurah ascends in Chesed. And this is called not expanding in Gvurah. Why? He doesn't say. And this is called not expanding in Gvurah. At that time, the vessel of Gvurah turns her anterior downward and gives 5 lights below in Tiferet. This is called expanding in Tiferet. So what's written here? There's a change. He says it didn't expand in Keter, but expands in Chokhmah. That's clear. At that time, Bina was supposed to remain there in Chokhmah as in the beginning. Meaning, as we learned in the second stage, where it expanded in Chokhmah. So we learned that Bina ascends to Chokhmah. So he says no. But because of the light of Chesed in her place, she descends to be there with him. Why? We didn't learn that. We learned the opposite. It remained in her place as delighted in mercy. She needs to annul herself and ascend to Chokhmah. Then, in her place is the light of Chokhmah. Then when the light of Chokhmah is in her place, Binah refines itself and ascends to Chokhmah. Then Chesed, she can give to who? To the vessel of Chesed. Here it's written that she descended to her place. So what do we have? Chesed, that's okay. Let's see what he explains. There's a change. So how does he explain this contradiction? Inner light. 41, not expanding in Keter, that's simple. It is so because the coarseness of phase 3 of the female and phase 4 of the male in the vessel of Keter was refined once more. At that time, zone of Keter departed to its root and then turned the interior downward. In other words, it canceled the interior that was mercy and the posterior that was before the posterior to Chokhmah and became interior. Now he illuminates Chokhmah. After that, it gave the residue in it, which is the coarseness of phase 3 of the male and phase 2 of the female, to the vessel of Chokhmah. And then it is Mati expanding in Chokhmah. There's no innovation here. At that time, Bina was supposed to remain there in Chokhmah as in the beginning. After the interior returned to its place in Chokhmah, we learn that Chokhmah and Bina immediately returned to 1 degree. At that time, Bina is in the vessel of Chokhmah, like we learned there. What did we learn here? Here's one stage that tells us that then Bina became one with Chokhmah in order to annul herself, like we learned in the second stage, that there'll be Chokhmah for who? For phase 1 that's at its place, that we learned while it was expanding in Keter and not expanding in Chokhmah, expanding in Bina, then there is no Chokhmah. So the Chesed ascends to the vessel of Bina. Now that there is Chokhmah, Bina rises to Chokhmah in order for there to be the light of Chokhmah at its place. So that's correct. Then Bina is in the vessel of Chokhmah and receives Chokhmah. However, it does not remain so. Why? Here, since Chokhmah turned to her anterior downward and her posterior upward, and returned the zone of Bina to the vessel of Bina. And they were divided into 2 partsufim once more. And examine that carefully. Why? First, when the vessel of Chokhmah received her lights of Zon, and the interior of Chokhmah returned to its place as in the beginning, Bina and Chokhmah certainly joined and became one vessel. It is so for the same reason mentioned above regarding the birth of the Gadlut of Chesed, what we learned in the second stage. Since here too, when Chesed is in the vessel of Bina, which connected the vessel of Bina to the vessel of Chokhmah, Chesed, it receives illumination of Chokhmah once more as in the beginning. Thus you find that Chesed has grown once more and does not need its Ima. Yet, it still cannot descend from himself to his vessel except through the vessel of Bina. Hence, Chokhmah had to return the zone of Bina to the vessel of Bina. And then Binah too returns her interior downward and returns the light of Chesed to its place, to its vessel. Just he tells us that Binah, when it expanded in Chokhmah, she received Chokhmah. So the light of Chesed that is in the place of Binah already has Chokhmah. It can already come out on its own. But when I say that it expanded in Chokhmah, it's coarseness 3 on 2, or 2 on 2. Whichever way you say it, Binah has phase 2. So Binah can't have Chokhmah. So instead of phase 2, it refines to phase 1. Then she can give back to phase 1 to the vessel of Chesed. When he says that he descended to its place. But same thing should have been in phase 1 there. And he doesn't mention it. But actually, he only gives half a thing here. In this place, he gives more details, meaning what we learned on the second phase, you remember? That when it expanded in Chokhmah, so it gave on, the opposite. What was in the first stage? It's confusing. It expanded in Keter phase 4 on 3. And in Keter, only the posterior illuminated called Chasadim. So we learned that the light of Keter that does not let phase 4 clothe, but only Chasadim, only mercy. Then it refined to 4 on 3 in Keter and expanded in Chokhmah. So Keter refined from 3-4 to 3-2, then gives to Chokhmah 3-2, and one more thing, Keter was before where his anterior bestowed mercy and it's posterior to Chokhmah, and now it's the opposite. Keter now bestows Chokhmah to Chokhmah. Is that clear? There's a change here.
There's a reversal of the interior in two things. One, from phase 4 over 3 to phase 3 over 2, and from Chasadim to Chokhmah. This is the same as Chokhmah, and is called face-to-face. We're already speaking of stage 2. Expanding in Keter, stage 1, now we speak of expanding in Chokhmah. Stage 2, expanding in Chokhmah. Meaning after Keter was refined from male and female, from phase 4 over 3 to phase 3 over 2, it gave to Chokhmah, phase 3 over 2. That's 1. And this is called expanding in Chokhmah. What was next? Afterward, we learned that phase 3 in the vessel of Chokhmah was refined. And we learn, and this gave to whom? To Binah. He calls it illumination only. From illumination only, it gave Chokhmah to Binah. What is illumination only? The coarseness that phase 1 still has, it did not give to it. Clear? It has phase 3 over 2. What did it give to Binah? Only phase 2. And this is called that there were 2 couplings there. 1 coupling on 2 phases. On the 2 of clothing and the 2 of coarseness. Upon 2 phase 2s, a level emerged, and this level is called phase 2. The gar within it remained in the vessel of Chokhmah, and the vak within it descended to the vessel of Binah. This is called Binah has the vak of the male of phase 2. Here, it is not called male of the phase of clothing. Here it is called male by the name of the light, as distinct from the record in the vessel of Bina from what remained of the Potzuf of Galgalta, called the two of clothing, which is called the female by the name of the record of clothing. Also the opposite. We always learn record of clothing is male. Here it is called female. Why? If I call the light male, then the record, which is not actually light, is called female. That is to say, the meanings interchange according to the matter. Since a revealed light, how did I get here? After phase 2 of Chokhmah was refined, it rose to Keter. Expanding occurred in Keter, and the remainder descended to Bina. Expanding occurred in Bina. So now the order is no expanding in Keter, no expanding in Chokhmah, expanding in Bina. And the phase 1 that is in Bina cannot descend to Chesed. There's no Chokhmah. And this is called an infant who needs his mother. Clear up to here? You ask why I say something different from what we learned until now. So you said male and female is a borrowed term and a name according to the matter. If I say there's a record of deficiency, then the record of coarseness is called female. The record of light is called clothing, male. There is no deficiency there. Now, if I tell you that the light, the male, that light is called male by the name of light, then the record is called female relative to the light. If you know, that is another matter. Clear? Continuing. What was next? Again, expanding in Keter. Phase 4 over 3 in Keter was refined, and again expanding in Chokhmah occurred. Then, Bina, seeing that there's Chokhmah in Chokhmah, Bina, Chada Nafkin and Chada Sharian, Bina joins with Chokhmah. When Bina has Chokhmah, it turns out that phase 1 within the vessel of Bina now has Chokhmah, so they can go out. So we learn now no expanding in Bina, no expanding in Keter, therefore expanding in Chokhmah. And no expanding in Bina, Bina rose to whom? To Chokhmah. And we also say another thing, no expanding in Bina, Bina refines now from phase 2 to phase 1. And phase 2 within it to phase 1 in order to be able to give phase 1 to phase 1 so that there's no phase 2, so there's equivalence of form. So it turns out Bina, after it refined, rose to Chokhmah. And then the phase 1 that was in the vessel of Bina descended to Chesed. So I learn now no expanding in Keter, expanding in Chokhmah. One can say no expanding in Bina because Bina rose above. And expanding in Chesed, it now has the light of Chasadim with illumination of Chokhmah in the vessel of Chesed. Afterward, we learn no expanding in Chokhmah and no expanding in Bina, meaning Chokhmah and Bina both rose to whom? To Keter. Why? If I say Bina was refined to phase 1 and gave everything to the vessel of Chesed, then Bina rose to Chokhmah, and also Chokhmah was refined, and it rose to whom? To Keter. Expanding in Keter occurred again, and no expanding in Chokhmah and Bina. And no expanding in Chesed, because if there is Chesed, it has no Chokhmah there. It rises to whom? To the vessel of Bina. and the remainder that was in the vessel of Chesed. What is remainder? We will see later. Was given to Gvura. So now what is the order? Through the fact that Binah was refined from all its phase 2 and rose to Chokhmah, and Chokhmah was also refined then, as we learned that phase 1, how did we learn? You ask, why do I learn that when the Bina that was in the vessel of Chokhmah was refined, everything was refined? That is called no expanding in Chokhmah and Bina. That's what you're asking. Why? I say, at the time Bina was refined and became phase 1, in order to have equivalence of form with the vessel of Chesed, so it could give phase 1 to the vessel of Chesed, it turns out Bina was refined. We understand. You ask only, why was Chokhmah refined? Why? I say, at the moment Ima, Bina, bestowed the light of Chesed to the vessel of Chesed, then Bina was refined. We understand, why was Chokhmah refined? That's the question. So he says, no, at the time Ima, Bina was refined, Chokhmah was refined first. Upon what? Chokhmah, as long as there is no dominion of Keter, one must say the light of Chokhmah can shine.
נעבור לחלק הבא של השיעור, לימוד
Let's go to the next part of the lesson, studying between friends.